Everybody, it's Leroy from Leroy Gaming back with another video on Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and with the release of all the information on the different skill trees, I have gone ahead and started to look and give you an overview as well as my feedback so far on the passives for the various classes. In my previous video, we looked at the Graveborn, and in today's video, we're going to look at the Brr-Zerker, because it's time to crush your enemies, have them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women, all men, depending what your style is. So, as with the previous video, I'm going to go ahead and start with a very quick overview of the character. We're going to look at the class feat and abilities because they will be relevant to the passives. And then we will go ahead and take a look at all of the passives, and I'll give you my feedback, my initial thoughts of the class as it stands. Now, remember, if you guys like this content, want to see more of it, do drop a like. Let me know your feedback in the comments. And of course, if you like to see my additional content that covers on looters, shooters, RPGs, and sometimes indie games here or there, then make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at everything new about the Brr-Zerker. We're going to start with a quick overview of the Brr-Zerker class for those of you that are just watching this for the first time and don't know that much about it. So the Brr-Zerkers are specialists of melee and frost damage. Their otherworldly powers allow them to become enraged via their action skills, channel the power of frost through weaponry, so that they may freeze and shatter their enemies and manifest an arsenal of raw destructive force. Brr-Zerkers are even able to channel their bloodthirst by leeching life from fallen foes using a dash of occult magic. Now, it's important to note that in this game, unlike any other game in the Borderlands series, the extensiveness to which you can get various melee weapons and upgrade them, or not necessarily upgrade them, but how they can roll when they drop, is quite extensive. So it's no longer just a basic melee attack that looks a certain way, and maybe you'll have a couple passives that modify. Now you actually have weapons that you collect of various rarities. So this is going to make this Brr-Zerker very, very interesting and unique. Now, next we want to take a quick look at the class feat. It's called Rage of the Ancients. Now remember, this is, think of this as a passive. If you multi-class with the Barbarian, or I can't call it the Barbarian, the Brr-Zerker, if you were to use this as a secondary, you would basically get this class feat on your primary character, whatever that is. So this states that using an action skill, so action skills are the abilities / spells in this game, causes the Fate Maker to become enraged, adding bonus frost damage to their attacks. Enraged duration will not deplete while an action skill is active and ends if the Fate Maker enters Save Your Soul. So Save Your Soul, I believe, is like save your life. So when you basically get knocked down and are fighting for your life, that's what Save Your Soul is here. Activating an action skill when already enraged restores a portion of the enraged timer. So in this case, this class feat is an active feat that you utilize as opposed to just like a passive ability. So you basically want to make sure that you combo this with the abilities. And speaking of abilities, let's take a look at the action skills real quick before we start with the passives. The first one you get to choose from, and remember, you only get to choose one, is Dreadwind. The Fate Maker sends slashing anything nearby with their melee weapons and essentially becomes a pain tornado, grants increased movement speed and slow immunity for a duration. So this is basically the slow to win, spin to win rather, not slow to win, the spin to win gameplay of traditional barbarians and action RPGs, for example. And you've seen footage of this, hopefully it's pretty darn cool. And then the second option is Feral Surge. Fate Maker leaps towards their target, deals frost damage to all nearby enemies. Any non-boss enemies' damage will be instantly killed if their total hit point is below a certain percentage. If Feral Surge kills an enemy, its cooldown is reset. So even though I think Dreadwind is kind of cooler thematically, if you can kind of jump from enemies to enemies and kill them and just keep spamming this ability, this could be quite interesting for sure. Although clearing out big packs of enemies, I think would be probably a little bit more fun, but Dreadwind. But I reserve judgment until I get to actually try this out. Now for the new fun stuff. Let's talk passive. So we're going to start with tier 1. As a reminder, the way that tiers work in Borderlands games is that you need to basically have 5 points allocated before you can reach tier 2. And then you need a total of 10 points to reach tier 3 and so forth. They do not have to be in subsequent tiers. So for example, if you like 10 points allocated out of tier 1, you could technically skip tier 2 if you wanted to and jump straight to tier 3. So the first tier 1 passive is called Ancestral Frost. You can put up to 5 points into it, and frost damage is increased. So very straightforward, straight up frost damage buff. So we'll have to see how well this scales, how effective this is actually percentage-wise. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 5% each, and so 5 points is 25%. So not all your damage is frost, to keep that in mind, but if you kind of go for a frost build, this could be interesting. The second passive is Savagery, also 5-point max. Melee damage is increased, and rage duration is increased. So if you're going to be really kind of synergizing around your abilities and your feet more than your guns, this could be kind of interesting. And then the final tier 1 passive is called Unyielding. Only 3-point maximum here. A percentage of missing health regenerates over time. While enraged, this effect is doubled. So depending on how high this gets, this could be decent. I have found that life leeching effects that scale off weapon damage tend to be superior in the Borderlands series. A lot of times the regenerative percentage tends to be a little too low, but maybe this will be okay. And the fact that part of it is always active and part of it gets doubled while in range makes it that it's always useful to a certain degree. Now we start tier 2 of Icebreaker. This is up to 3 points max. And with this, the Fate Maker gains increased damage dealt to enemies that are slowed. The closer an enemy is to being frozen, the more damage is increased. So I can see this synergizes really well with the Spin to Win ability, because you're going to be doing AoE damage, you're going to be slowing targets, so this will allow you to deal more damage. And I'm assuming that applying frost damage repeatedly is what causes your ability to freeze individuals. And so if you combo high frost damage or effects from guns and or weapons with this, it could be a really nice combination to stack quite a bit of damage. Next, we have the old ways. So the Fate Maker deals bonus damage and gains increased damage reduction the closer they are to the enemy. The closer the enemy is, the greater the bonus, which that seems very... Isn't that saying the same thing? I don't know. Now, this is obviously if you're going to go for a very close melee build, if you're going to focus more on your melee weapons, either you're jumping from enemy to enemy as much as you can with your ability, or even, just whirlwinding into them. So if you want to kind of lean into the melee format here, this is going to potentially be good. The real question will be, how significant are the percentages? Will they be worth the 5 points? And then the final tier 2 passive is called Instinct. Reload speed is increased, weapon swap speed is increased, while in rage, this effect is doubled. I'm going to guess this is probably going to get ignored by most people. Pretty much in every Borderlands game I've played, and I've played them all, reload speed and weapon swap speed just doesn't translate to enough of a direct DPS increase. So unless you have a really wonky build that really relies on weapon swapping, for example, I feel like this is going to be mainly ignored. All right, next we have tier 3, and the first one is called Cold Snap. Movement speed is increased. Frost efficiency is increased, while in rage, this effect is doubled. Now, this could be interesting because if you're going to go for the spin to win build and you increase your movement speed, I'm assuming you can spin through more enemies and cover more ground. And frost efficiency should increase the rate at which you freeze enemies. And especially with the tier 2 passive we saw that increases your damage the closer an enemy is to freezing, this could synergize really well. And you get the max effect in 3 points, so that could potentially be a good investment. Next, we have the first 1 point tool, and that's Unarmored Defense. A portion of the Fate Maker's ward is reserved and cannot be restored but their maximum health is increased by a percentage of the reserved amount. Health can no longer be reserved. Interesting. So, So this is the shielding versus the health. So if you want to really lean into a high health build and you have ways to regenerate health effectively, I could see this being interesting. Additionally, it seems like the note at the bottom states that if you're reserving ward for a feature, you can't do the opposite. You can't choose something that would reserve your health to, for example, I would assume, increase your ward. Next, we have Blood Frenzy, and this is a kill skill. So it restores a percentage of your enrage timer and a percentage of your maximum health whenever you kill enemies. So as with all kill skills, unless there's a secondary way to proc them, it is highly effective when you're playing solo. And then the more players that are in a group, the more likely that somebody else gets a kill shot. So you may not get as much bang for your buck here. Again, depending on what the percentage of enrage refunded and or maximum health refunded whenever you kill, this may be worth it or may not. It may be something where some people just put like 1 point in as a filler. But a full 3-point investment especially is going to depend on how high those percentages are. All right, next we move on to tier 4. We start with Ancient Fury. Maximum health is increased and splash damage is increased. So I could definitely see this being good if you use that secondary ability where you kind of do AoE leap, which does splash damage. So that's going to be good as well. Now, it is all splash damage. So there are guns, especially like a lot of rocket launchers. They're going to do splash damage. I'm assuming some of the melee weapons will also do splash damage. So this is actually, again, depending on the actual numbers behind this, this could be decent. And then we have another 1-point ability called Relentless Rage. If the Fate Maker damages an enemy while in Save Your Soul, again, formerly known as Save Your Life, its duration is extended. The amount extended decreases over time. Killing an enemy while in Save Your Soul will cause the Fate Maker to become enraged. So that's a big deal. Now, if you kill an enemy, you also pop back up, but now you get that enrage effect. So you not only come back, but now you've got this second wind where you're just ready to kick butt and take names. For 1 point, this might be worth it. A lot of gameplay, I think, really revolves around never dropping. If you're playing really well and you're kind of pushing the limits, you should hopefully never drop 0 health, where this should even come into play. But if you're learning and you're new, leveling up, I could see this being good. At the same time, I could see later on people speccing out of this and putting into something that just directly impacts your DPS all the time. All right, it is time for the penultimate tier 5. We start with Blast Chill. It's a 1-point max. Whenever the Fate Maker deals melee damage to an enemy, there's a chance to release the Frost Nova, dealing frost ability damage to nearby enemies. Frost Nova cannot critically hit. So this, again, if you're going to be going heavy into melee build, this is going to be a decent proc. If you don't use melee very often or only situationally, this is going to be a waste. It can't crit, which is a bummer. There also is a big question of what this percentage is. I mean, are we talking about 10%, 25%, 50%? Depending on this value of the percentage, that will dictate dramatically whether this is worth it or not. And then we have Iron Squall. It's 5 points. Fire rate is increased. Melee attack speed is increased, while Enrage's effect is doubled. Now, this could be very, very good, because both fire rate and melee attack speed are going to directly increase your DPS. And then doubling it when you enrage is awesome. Again, depending on what this is, I'm going to probably guess it's 5% per point. So potentially 25% fire rate and 25% melee attack speed. If that is, then that could be good. It could be either 25 or 50% when you're enraged. It may be weaker. We'll have to see when we get access to the actual game or some way to see the numbers. Maybe when they release a kind of character build feature like they have on all the other Borderlands games. And then finally, we have the ultimate ability, tier 6, Blood of the Fallen. 1 point, it's a kill skill. The Fate Maker's remaining action skill cooldown is reduced by a percentage. If an action skill is currently active, its duration is extended instead. So this is big. Anytime you kill anything, either if you're on cooldown, it's going to be quicker to get off cooldown. But if you're in the middle of like a spin to win and you're just constantly killing things, this can keep extending. You could just have a giant amount of carnage. This is not as useful with the leaping ability because remember that one refreshes itself when enemies get killed. You don't get quite as much mileage, but still, if you between killing things on the leap and also lowering the cooldowns when you're off the leap, you can have that up more often. But again, I feel like Blood of the Fallen would be a little bit better when you play with the spin to win ability. All right, guys, so I hope you guys found this helpful. If you did, and you like this coverage and want to see more, make sure to like, drop a comment, let me know your thoughts on the Brr-Zerker. Are you going to play this class? Are you going to try a different class? I am reserving my right to potentially be excited about this class. It seems a little bit more vanilla compared to some of the other cool classes, but we shall see. You know, I love my big, tanky, hulky characters, so this could be quite interesting after all. All right, guys, thank you for all the support as always. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff to support the channel, and I will see you guys in the next video.